July 2010, the first section of the world's tallest self-anchored suspension tower was moved into place. Now finished, its gleaming white surface can be seen from miles away. But it's not until recently that drivers may have noticed the main cable and its 200 steel wire suspender ropes and its 114 cable bands are also being painted white. White, not silver gray like the West Span. White was picked by architects to reflect the nearby port of Oakland. It's a common bridge color around the world, but not in the U.S. Nearly 24 painters began the task of painting the cable and suspenders in September 2012 and will finish in April. It's not an easy job.
It's pretty tough. I mean, there's a lot of climbing up there and moving up and down the footbridge in this case. And if they have to do any repairs, they'll be doing them from cranes and walking on top of the cable and stuff like that. So it's not an easy job.
Brian Bold is the Caltrans manager for the cable system. He says the tent-like system you see here is to ensure paint doesn't drift in the wind and primarily to control the painting environment. Heat is pumped up to the work area for the main cable work.
It can be a little dusty. It's very warm, and because they pump heated air into it to keep the relative humidity down, basically. They also have an air outtake because if they're doing any sanding or anything, you particulate matter out of the environment there. First you have to go up and clean all the suspenders. Then you have to put the primer on all the suspenders. Then there's 2 coats, working coats of Noxide is the brand name of the paint. It's made by Rust-Oleum. That's a highly elastic paint that will stretch with the cables as they stretch during temperature cycles and live load cycles with the loading on the bridge. And then finally the top coat of the glossy white paint. This shows the entire protection for this suspender, actually starting from the wire itself, which is galvanized, coated with zinc in manufacture. So that's the first layer of protection for the wires. Then on top of that, we have a primer coat, this white paint right here, that's to hold the subsequent coats to that galvanized surface. Then comes the real working layers, the Noxide, which is applied in 2 coats of contrasting colors, simply so the painters can see any skips, holidays, or anything in that paint system to make sure they get a good coat of paint on in the first coat that they call blue-gray. And then on top of that goes another coat of Noxide they refer to as gravel gray. And then comes the acrylic coat on top of that. And that's the same system that is on all suspenders and the main cable itself, which is also composed of galvanized wire with the same paint system on it. The only difference with the main cable is that it gets additional 2 levels of protection in that it's coated with a zinc paste and wrapped with an additional protective coating of galvanized wire.
It's hard work, but not as painstaking as painting the original West Span, which was all done by hand. The 5-step suspender painting has been automated.
Yeah, it's a little cylinder with spray heads on the inside of it that they take all the way up to the top, and then it's self-powered so that it's a controlled descent at a calculated rate of speed to give them the exact thickness of paint laid down that is required per coat. And that's how they cleaned it as well. Instead of having paint heads in the cylinders, they had spray heads blowing steam out of it to steam clean the cables, and then used a similar system to apply the paint.
The final touch, these clamps are applied to the suspenders to prevent the longest suspenders from vibrating in the wind, which would actually provide harmonics, music, but would also allow the bridge to sway if the clamps were not in place. The white, new east span of the Bay Bridge opens to traffic Labor Day weekend. Mark Jones reporting.